Hello everyone and welcome to another video. Now it always interests me to learn how hardware prices for PC components vary in different countries. A couple of days ago I was talking to someone who was telling me that hard drives are so expensive where they live and they was thinking about using an SD card to store a couple of their games. After all, games consoles like the Nintendo Switch and PS Vita store their games on SD cards and they run just fine. Now I've briefly touched on this subject before when we ran a few games off a USB 3 stick, but today I thought I'd try it out with a micro SD card. Tell you the best way to do this if you're planning on doing it at all, as well as discussing some of the positives and negatives of storing some of your favourite titles on an SD memory card as opposed to a traditional hard drive. So let's get into it and talk about the components that will be best suited to carrying out something like this. Of course, the first point to mention is that if you own a Windows tablet like the Surface Pro, an SD card is essential to upgrading the storage, and it's in instances like this whereby using a memory card might seem like an ideal solution to put some games on. I don't have a Surface tablet though, so I'm going to use my PC. The first thing I did was pop on over to Amazon and ordered a Class 10 UHS 1 SD card, as well as a USB 3 card reader. Now SD cards come in different classes, with each one representing different read-write speeds. A Class 10 will guarantee us faster transfer rates and hopefully better loading times. The card itself cost me just a few pounds, but it will still work out much more money per gigabyte here in the UK than a traditional hard drive or even SSD. Next it was time for a speed test. After running Crystal Disk here, it seemed we were certainly getting the promised speeds, but these results are lacking in comparison to a standard HDD. But let's get into a couple of games. First of all, I started with the load times, the factor that will be most affected by the use of an SD card. I fired up Battlefield 3 and loaded my last save game on my traditional hard drive, and then the card. Let's look at that side by side. The game is loading into single player here, so it should be quicker anyway, but I'll leave these two to finish to give you a better idea. As you saw there, the hard drive was much quicker in this instance, but the performance of the game is identical in both situations. There was a brief freeze on the SD card at the start of the level, but this seemed to be the only hiccup, and it was a minor one at that. Otherwise, the frame rates and frame times remained the same. I played for about an hour, and in both cases it was a flawless experience. I then did the same with the Elder Scrolls Skyrim. The load times were next to identical when loading my last save game once again, in both cases taking just a matter of seconds. The real-time gaming results were also evenly matched. No stutter to speak of in both instances. Just like in Battlefield, I played for about an hour with no issues to report. And on an unrelated note, I can't believe this game is 7 years old. I still don't think I've discovered every location. Finally, I tested out Overwatch. It would be unfair to compare load times as it varies depending on the game type and map, but I just wanted to report here that gameplay was identical once again, and that goes for both a bot match and online play, in case you were wondering. Overall, this worked out pretty well, and as expected, load times will be most affected, though in some games you won't even notice a difference there. To conclude, an SD card certainly shouldn't be used on your desktop PC to replace a hard drive, but I'm sure you already knew that. It's good to know that if you want to store a couple of titles on one, then things should run fine. Just check the speed and class of the card you're buying beforehand. So there we have it. It's been a little bit different, but this was sort of a viewer request, so I hope you've enjoyed it. If you did, leave a like on it. If you didn't, leave a dislike on it. Subscribe to the channel if you haven't done so already, and hopefully I'll see all of you in the next one.